Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of You Had Me at Eat. I'm Erica,
And I'm Jules.
and we are here today with another amazing episode featuring another amazing guest. We're just so lucky to have so many gluten-free friends in this community, and I mean, Jules has been around since practically the Ice Age. So
Thanks.
for us to know,
Thanks a lot. There's no subtle jabs there.
for us to know everyone who has come through this space has been a blessing, sometimes a curse, but mostly a blessing. And today is one of our biggest blessings that we've met over the years. I'd like to introduce everyone to our guest today, which is Erin from Gluten Free Globetrotter. Say hello, Erin.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We're thrilled to get to see one of our old friends. Erin has been around the block as long as I have in the gluten-free space. And actually, I think Erin has been gluten-free longer than I have. You have a milestone that you're here to celebrate with us, aren't you?
I am, yes. So I just celebrated living with celiac for 45 years, which
That's amazing.
is
Yeah.
impossible because I'm only 29. But yeah, so I was
Yeah.
diagnosed.
Age backwards.
I was diagnosed as a toddler. So this summer, I used July as my kind of celiac anniversary because that's the first time it was written in my pediatric medical charts. But yeah, so I was diagnosed in the summer of 1981.
Was
which
it
is nice.
hammered into stone tablets?
It was, yeah. That was like a smoke
it
signal
in-
for my parents. Like,
It was written in
"Pass it."
bananas.
Yeah.
He like laid the bananas
That was
out.
all I ate in the 80s, bananas
Exactly.
for 20 years.
Yep. Pretty much.
That's first of all, Erin, that's amazing. So first of all, that she has survived for 45 years as celiac, but also thrived. And I think that that's kind of the point of what you do with your social media empire under Gluten Free Globetrotter, to be able to share the fact that you can not only obviously survive for 45 years, but thrive and travel and do amazing things, move countries, live in a new country as someone with celiac. And I think that that gives a lot of hope and inspiration to people who feel like they can never leave their home. And I think that that's a Herculean task that you've given to the gluten-free community to say, like, hey, really, you can do this, I promise. So Erin, why don't you tell us how you started, why you got into this? Obviously you were a toddler, so you don't really remember like what you were before.
Tell us
going
about the
gluten-free,
toddler
but,
years.
tell us why you started this and why you thought it was pertinent for you at the time to start your blog Gluten Free Fun when you first started.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, being diagnosed in the 80s, it was in the pre-internet world. My parents had no way of really meeting other people unless it was connections through our doctor. And then finally, like when I was a teenager, there was a Celiac Sprue Association, which it has been renamed many times since.
Yeah.
So we joined the CSA, and that's when I met someone else with celiac for the first time. I think I was like 14 or 15. So, and I just realized, first of all, everyone in that group was a million years old. And I was like, Mom, I have an old person's disease. And but then slowly more teenagers joined. So I was just like thrilled to meet someone else who had celiac, because without the internet, it's really hard.
Isn't that wild? Because, honestly, they used to call it, a pediatric disorder, right? And yet your experience is the opposite, is that when you were diagnosed as you were supposed to have been as a child by a pediatrician, the people that you were meeting were not your age, that there was no support system for little children like that. They were all, older people.
No, not at all. And really, everyone who joined the group was in my age bracket was from the same doctor. So he was the one kind of saying, hey, you join this celiac sprue group. So, fast forward through college, I went away to college, didn't know anyone in college that was celiac. And then...
But wait, hang on one second. That's a big whoa. I mean, like right now, this time of year, there's all these students that are getting ready to go to college, and students who have planned their entire college around which one can handle me, a celiac, or someone with dietary restrictions, who can handle me the best, whatever. That never even used to be on the radar. Like, how did you go to college and eat well? And this is before the ADA recognized celiac as part of, you know, the ADA and being covered. And I mean, so how did you handle that?
Honestly, like, I was very sick in college. Like, I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, the word cross contact wasn't even in my vocabulary until I was like in my probably 30s. I just went to college, you know. I didn't, you know, looking back, I probably thought about it and talked about it with my parents, but I just went to school. I picked the school based on, you know, location and education rather than food. I ate in the cafeteria the first 2 years of school. I was sick a lot, but I also made a lot of stupid mistakes. And, you know, I got junior year of college, I had my own kitchen, but I was sharing it with 8 other girls. And then senior year, I had a kitchen. We had 15 people in our house. So, you know, it was just, I wasn't the healthiest in my college years. I made a lot of cheating choices, which I can't even imagine doing so now. But my mom knew I was really sick. I got mono. I just couldn't get better. And it was really until like I graduated college and then was living either back at home and then on my own that I started to like actually feel better and then recognize how sick I was making myself through 4 years of college. But I survived. I did survive. I wouldn't say I thrived in my late teens, early 20s. I was sick a lot. And looking back, there's so many things, like so many illnesses that I'm sure were related to like constant exposure to gluten by mistake, you know, and it was really in my 20s when I felt healthier again. So, yeah, but I mean, to your point, like I see now, like, you know, students talking to dietitians before they go on campus and setting up plans. And like, that didn't even like, wasn't on our radar at all back then. Yeah. Maybe it should have been, but there was nobody telling me like that it needed to be done. And I wasn't thinking about it. So,
yeah. Well, and they wouldn't have known what to do with you anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It would be like,
to be fair,
cook your own food. Yeah. And that said, though, I do know my college, which is Marist University, has an allergen section in their dining hall. I've actually met a number of people with celiac that have since graduated or go to Marist now and eat way, way better than I did when I was
amazing,
in college.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it really is changed.
Erin, like you raw dogged college. Like, zero prep, zero whatever. You're just like, sure. Yep, just gonna, and I can't even imagine because when I do these like little like the summer camp for teens that are thinking about college, and we go through everything like, hey, you're covered by ADA, so make sure that you go see your dietitian and you work with your dining hall, and you need to see this, and you need to see the disability offices, and blah blah blah. And so we give them like a 20-page document on how to prepare for college, and just like, and I just went to college. And I have
what choice did she have?
You said summer camp too. I mean, so I went to sleepaway camp 7 years, and it was the same thing. I totally like. They gave me a little section of the walk-in fridge, which was like a milk crate, and I had all my bread and my cereal and my pasta, and then it was just like, you know, putting my health and life in the hands of the cook at my sleepaway camp, and we tipped her well.
Cook. And the teenage
No. She was a mom, so she was
who's on KP duty today.
Yeah, but there were so many things, and that's where I really, you know, want to tell people like I survived. Maybe I wasn't the healthiest, but I survived and then thrived as an adult, right? Yeah. Like I made it happen because we didn't have the information. We didn't know anything. I mean,
you couldn't.
Yeah, there was nothing. It was me giving my chef or my cook at camp a 1-page thing that my doctor printed out, you know, made a photocopy of, and we handed it in. It was like 1993, you know, like that was it. So but yeah, so I guess
that's super cool that they did that for you, actually.
Yeah, and that's I see today. Like I've also volunteered at like celiac camp out in Livermore, California, and like I was like, oh my god, like this exists. Like I wish I had this when I was a kid. Like
we donate like gluten-free pancake
Yeah,
mix and
yeah,
gluten-free
yeah.
graham cracker mix and everything to the celiac camps, and they send me all these pictures and stuff, and I'm always like, this is the coolest thing. It's just, I get chills and sometimes tears, and it just makes me so excited for these kids to have, a community and to not be the only one. Because what you said earlier, when you met your first, celiac, that I saw another person, right?
Yeah.
And you were quite young at the time. And I still remember when I met the first person I had ever met with celiac disease besides myself.
Yeah.
And I wasn't young. I mean, I was diagnosed when I was in my late 20s. And so, I was over 30 by the time I met another person who had celiac disease. And I felt like a kid. I was just like, oh my God, a friend, and it was like, you're another human being. Can I touch you? Like, you're real,
You're real, yeah.
Yeah. And I still remember that feeling. And for these kids to all be there together, I'm going to get like emotional talking about it right now, like for them to all be together and feel normal and to have each other and that support system that you didn't have, that, I didn't have in my 30s, like, just, it's just so great. I'm so excited that we have this now. It's very different.
It's so different. And I also remember the first person I met, and like we reconnected on Facebook like many years later. Like we're both moms now, and it's like, remember we didn't know anyone back in 1994. So, but yeah, I mean, things have changed so much. And Erica, like kind of going to your question, like that's what really led me, I guess, to the path, like of wanting to share my experiences. And I started working in Manhattan right after college. That was like a dream of mine. And I wanted to meet other people. And it was right after 9/11. This new website, meetup.com, started. And they contacted me somehow, or I found them. I don't even remember. It was like 2022, 2023. And they had a gluten-free meetup group. I went. It was 4 other people. Meetup.com organized it. So it was at a bakery where we could not eat anything. And we just sat there, like 5 of us looking at each other like, hey, like you have celiac, me too. Like we can't eat anything here. So kind of like evolved.
Let's bounce.
Yeah, I was like, we got to get out of here. And then by 2004, I was organizing events for meetup.com, and it became like the New York City Celiac Meetup Group. And kind of like the rest is history. I managed that group for more than 10 years. But that, as an adult, that was like, okay, here's my chance to meet the other people that I didn't meet as a kid. Because I knew they existed. I knew it was people working in Manhattan who wanted to go out, go to happy hours, socialize, like live their early 20s life. And I was like, there gotta be other people out there. And that's really what Meetup did, is they kind of like introduced me to this community that I had been lacking for like my entire life.
So you're you're a celiac in the early 2000s in Manhattan. New York, we know now, is incredible for people with celiac disease who are gluten-free and who need to eat other things, dairy-free, etc. How was it back then? How was it post 9/11, early 2000s? How was New York? How did you were you eating out? Were you able to do anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were very like niche bakeries back then, 1 or 2 that I could think off the top of my head. And as we all know, like people are loyal, so like word gets around. And so what I noticed back then was that the gluten-free bakeries, or if there were a few gluten-free restaurants, they took it really seriously. And so it wasn't very trendy yet to be gluten-free. It was still early. So these establishments really catered to the celiac gluten-free customer, most likely because they had someone who founded the restaurant or the bakery who had the condition, right? And from there, I just, as I was running these meetup events, I would go to new restaurants in my neighborhood that I knew I was comfortable eating. And then I just started working more with chefs and back then, and I think it's been reestablished, was the Chef to Plate campaign, which was through the gluten intolerance group. And I got really involved with that, which was like training chefs and restaurants about gluten-free. And really, I did a lot of work to make sure that the events I was hosting were in safe restaurants. I didn't want to bring other people into my bubble and risk them getting ill. So went to restaurants constantly, talked to the chefs, got them training if they were willing to go through the training, and then really using the meetup as a platform until I started my own website, which was not until 2007. And I started that because there was another guy who was blogging about New York, and he's like, hey, you have this unique perspective, you should, and you're a New Yorker, you have a lot to say, so you should write a blog. And that's where Gluten Free Fun came from. And I mean, I blogged so much. I met you both through my blog and Twitter, and and that really kind of set me on the path to where I am today, like almost 20 years later. So
yeah.
So tell us the transition between Gluten Free Fun and Gluten Free Globetrotter. When did you kind of start to get the itch about traveling? And tell us about your first kind of international trip.
Sure. So, I mean, I was in my mid-20s living in New York. I had didn't have any people depending on me for income. So I was like, hey, I'm going to start traveling. My friends were all getting married. I was like, yeah, I'm not there yet. And so I took my first international solo trip to Prague in 2011. I was very scared because the language is very different. Back then there was maybe one or two translation card companies, and so I printed out some free Czech cards. And then I went to Prague and I did it. I was there for probably 10 days. I drank beer on tap for the first time in my life, and I was like, I need to tell everyone this. And really, by the time I got home, like, Gluten Free Globetrotter was launched because I was so excited to share my travel experiences. And so 2011 is when I made that blog. And that's just my passion. Travel has always been my passion. Even as a teenager, my parents took us to places, far away places, and I managed. And so what I wanted to do with Gluten Free Globetrotter was to convince other people that they could also travel with celiac disease. I never wanted celiac to stop people from living life, but especially not like stop traveling. So
when you travel overseas, clearly you eat wheat, right? Like in Europe, I mean, because the wheat's totally different, right? I mean, obviously. So maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah. Well, there's this myth. So I said it like once a very long time ago, like gluten doesn't have a passport. Like it doesn't know, that you're crossing a border. It is not safe. Gluten is gluten around the whole world. There is a lot of chatter on social media that, you can go to Italy and eat whatever you want. It is not true. And I think one thing that I always emphasize is, like, you are spending all this time and all this money to get to a foreign land. Like, why would you even risk it? Why would you take the risk? Whether you hear it through TikTok or you hear it through an influencer, like, why would you take that risk so far away from home? I have been accidentally glutened in a foreign country before, and it ruined the second half of my trip. I just couldn't function. I react within an hour, and then I'm like debilitated on the floor in the bathroom for like 4 days, So I cannot comprehend this trend right now. And I also will like scream it from the rooftops that like gluten is gluten everywhere in this world. So,
well, and it doesn't make sense on so many levels, but like, why do they have like celiac associations, and why do they certify things in other countries if the wheat is safe there? Like, why does it matter?
Okay, so I want to talk about, we're talking about all this traveling. Are there any place that you've been over all your times where you're just like, wow, I thought I knew how to travel gluten-free, and this country has really tested me to my limits?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the most challenging has been in Asia because of the language difference and the cuisine difference. On top of celiac, I also have a shellfish allergy. So,
Oof, yeah,
you know,
that would be hard.
in Singapore, I went for work to Singapore, so I worked really closely with the Hilton in Singapore before I got there to kind of alert them that I was coming. But I was at a conference, so I was limited to what I could eat. Luckily, I connected with Karen Haran, who runs Gluten Free Singapore, who's actually originally from Pennsylvania. So she was like my buddy, my guide. We're still friends so many years later, and she really, you know, prepared me for my trip. Whereas in Thailand, I just kind of like, I don't pray, but I just kind of prayed and used a translation card wherever I went. In Thailand, I found places that I was comfortable and I went multiple times. You know, like if I found a place that I could eat pad thai safely, I went there every day for the next 3 days until I moved to the next city. That was right around when Find Me Gluten Free was coming out and getting a little bit more popular. So there were a few recommendations, and at that time there were also more blogs. So I would reach out to bloggers and stuff. But I would say that Asia really challenged me the most because of the language difference, really, and the understanding of allergies. Like it was really. I used these translation cards that almost worked too well. I remember clearly going to a restaurant and they were like, no, because they read the card in Thai and they were like, oh my God, we're going to kill this woman if we feed her, you know? And so they just turned me away. And then the next place turned me away as well. And so I was like very hangry at that point. Luckily in Asia, there's a lot of 7-Eleven. So I like really survived on like yogurts and boiled eggs and like ready to eat foods that I could like figure out from the label what was safe. But I know it's gotten much better now. There are plenty of gluten-free travelers that are going to Asia, and I'm like fascinated, by some of these people going to places like Kuala Lumpur. Like I was like never on my radar because I just was like I won't be able to eat there. But I picked Asia, I picked Thailand specifically to like challenge myself and really like put me out of my comfort zone, and it did. But it was like a once in a lifetime opportunity. I would do it again in a heartbeat. But I think that from what I see, I run this huge celiac travel group on Facebook, and like people go everywhere, and I love that. Like they are not letting celiac stop them. Like Kenyan safaris and like, just places that I'm like, wow, you made it work. And that's really why I started my website so long ago, because I was like, I want to prove that you can do this. And like there are tons of gluten-free travelers out there now that make it work. So I love that.
Amazing.
Can you just give a shout out to that travel group, just in case anyone's looking?
Oh, sure. So it's
find some more information.
Yeah, it's on Facebook. It's called Celiac Travel. We have 4 moderators from around the world. So there's people with perspectives from different parts of the world. It's like more than 50,000 members now. It's humongous.
Oh my God, Erin.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I never started it to be like that, and I can't believe it's that huge. We really do try to keep the conversation to travel. So that's why we have the moderators that we do. There's a lot of, really dangerous Facebook groups out there. So we really try to do our best to moderate it. So.
Very cool. Well, it sounds like a great resource.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great segue, Erin, because I think things have changed so rapidly since you started. I mean, you and Jules have literally seen the birth of the gluten-free internet. And I think that that's a really like beautiful, lovely, terrifying thing to see, because along with the beauty of sharing information, you also have the beauty of sharing misinformation and how scary it can be. So I know that your job is to help, people with celiac thrive. Jules does the same thing as well. What would you warn people about today on the internet that maybe was something that you never thought that was even possible when you started, blogging back in the day?
Oh man, I think the thing that terrifies me right now is AI in this space, because AI is like scraping websites for information, and not all of that information is accurate, and not all of that information is safe. I think that one thing I say with any tool that you use, including my own recommendations, like, use multiple sources to vet your information, right? Like, I know, Erica, you and I agree on, like, science is key. Like, let me point you to the scientific research when it comes to gluten in foreign countries. Let me point you to that research. So I think right now what I'm really trying to do is make sure people realize that AI can help in some ways, but it can also hurt. And if you're relying on AI to give you a list of restaurants, like, I think that's so dangerous when it comes to your health, especially with, like, food allergies, obviously celiac, but, like, anaphylactic food allergies, and, like, you're using a robot to make a list of restaurants. Like, that's just really dangerous. And it's also not accurate. And I think that really, we've all kind of said this in the past, like, over the years, is like, there are a lot of tools out there, but you need to kind of use your common sense and put these tools together to make a plan for you that works the best for you. So I just try to do the best that I can, be honest and authentic, and and if I think something is, like, bad information or just flat out false, I will point people to the right direction. I know that sometimes rubs people the wrong way, but, like, I'd rather ask questions to protect others and myself than to, like, just assume that someone on TikTok is, like, Bible.
Yeah, no, I think that's incredibly important. Obviously, we're seeing that in everything today online. The health literacy, the information literacy has plummeted, and it's terrifying in every aspect whatsoever. I also see that in AI when it comes to dining out, and it's so sketch. Like, I see what's happening in Arizona, and I'm like, what? I just see a lot of people selling scraped guides, and I'm like, ew, it's so tacky, it's so gross. AI is disgusting. Use it like the way that it's meant to be, and not stealing from other people. Anyway, I'm sorry. Jules, I mean, do you agree? Do you, like, I know that for you, I'm sure a lot of it's like AI scraping and making recipes that make zero sense whatsoever, and stealing your SEO Google juice. But what else do you see, Jules, from the change between when you and Erin started?
Well, I mean, just to answer that question, it's not just recipes. I mean, I've got a ton of blog information on my site too, where I'll top 18 tips for baking gluten-free bread, or whatever, and they'll just scrape that stuff, and they're not getting the full information, or how to shop for this or whatever, like shopping safely, dining out safely, like all of this, and they're not getting all the information. So it's just not, it's not healthy. They'll just grab little snippets, and that doesn't work for blog information, and it doesn't work for recipes either. I mean, obviously, yes, I've got over 500 recipes, and I really want people to come to my site to get the full recipe for many reasons, not the least of which is the fact that if you're just grabbing the list of ingredients, and you're not grabbing, like, all of the subtleties of how to make this recipe, with the step-by-step photos and all that kind of stuff, then the recipe is not going to go as well as it would if you did it the right way, So there's just so many different reasons why AI is a useful tool, but you can't rely on it to do all of your thinking for you, and you can't just get the Cliff Note versions.
And just start taking over
the
world and the
Cliff
Terminator
Notes
and, like,
is not the way to live your life. Yeah, and then we're all gonna die. Okay, great.
I do want to pivot for the sake of time. Erin, you're a mom now, which is wild.
Yeah.
Jules was talking about how old your kid is. I'm like,
yeah, it blew my mind. And I told my kid how old your kid was, and she couldn't believe it either.
It's funny. I think I met you. my son is 7 now. I feel like I met you, Jules, when your daughter was probably 7.
That's what I said. I told her that, and she was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So what is it like to have a kid now? And tell us, like, are you all gluten-free at home? Was your child tested for celiac? How do you feel about, like, that's a whole, just like a whole bucket of questions around, like, having your own mini-me. What does it mean for celiac disease?
Well, first of all, my son was diagnosed with a peanut allergy when he was 10 months old, which terrified me like 1,000 times more than celiac. I was all worried, okay, he's going to have celiac, I got this. And then the peanut allergy came out of nowhere. Luckily, fast forward, we did oral immunotherapy, and he has no peanut allergy anymore, which is fantastic.
Wow.
We did have him tested for celiac once. The doctor asked me, why would you want to get him tested for this? And I was like, because I have it, my sister has it, my nephew has it. Like, it's clearly in our family. He was probably about 3 and had been having some, like, bathroom issues. But he didn't test positive at that time. Like, I think she did the TTG test or something. I don't even remember. But he's never exhibited any symptoms. I was like textbook when I was a toddler, like distended belly, like really malnourished. I wasn't growing. But my son is growing like a weed this summer. Like, he's so tall and he's growing. And he eats everything. So I would say our house is probably like 90% gluten-free. Just by nature of, like, we don't eat a lot of, like, in my family, you know, we don't eat a lot of things that would have gluten. He does love croissants, especially now that we live in Montreal. So when we eat croissants, it's always out of our house because they're a mess. Luckily, there's many delicious gluten-free croissants here in Montreal too. But yeah, I mean, my son eats everything. He's a very good eater, and so he tries everything. And we, you know, I really just monitor him, and you know, if he wasn't growing or if he was expressing, like, you know, any stomach issues or anything. Like, I mean, there's so many symptoms. We would test him. I find it's a lot easier here in Canada to ask for a celiac test. So if, you know, now that we're living here and for the foreseeable future, like, I think I could probably get him tested sooner. And maybe I will one day just to, like, do it. We have not done the genetic testing on him just because we just didn't want to, and my husband didn't want that data out there in the world. But I have done the celiac genetic testing, and I'm like off the charts, you know, so to say. So I do have the genes. So, you know, I'll keep watching. We're aware of it. My sister has it and my nephew has it. My nephew developed celiac when he was probably around 9 or 10. So, you know, I'll just keep watching my son and seeing what happens. But
is he aware of it? Is he aware that one day he may have to go gluten-free?
You know, I don't know if he's aware of that. We, you know, from the very beginning of his peanut allergy, we always talked about it. We educated him about the EpiPen and stuff. So we always talked about his peanut allergy, and then, oh, and by mommy can't eat gluten, you know. So we talk about it a lot in my family. And he's very sweet because he'll ask me, like, oh, can you eat this? Can you taste this? Like, so he knows to ask. And he'll also be like, oh, this is so good, Mom. You're so jealous, aren't you? Yeah, I was like, yeah, I actually am. But no, I think he's aware of it. We just went away with our extended family, and one of our cousins is gluten-free. So it's kind of like, it's not an unknown topic to him. And I mean, he sees everything that I eat. So I don't think he would be really, you know, I don't think it would change him so much. And especially since, you know, I'm the one cooking for him, or my husband, and my husband's making everything gluten-free. So we do have 2 toaster ovens in our house. And, you know, we keep things separate when needed. But I think we're like 90 to 95% gluten-free in our house. We do have bread for him for sandwiches, and that's, you know, that's it. So
he'd be fine until he went to college like his mom.
No, he'd have like a plan, a 504, and he'll have all of that now.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you moved to Canada, which I think is amazing, and we're all very jealous. So what is the biggest thing when you moved to Canada besides our government, what is the biggest thing that is the difference for you as a celiac to making the move from US to Canada? What was the biggest difference that you see, and what are some examples of maybe why we would want to move to Canada as someone with celiac disease?
That's another topic and another podcast. No, honestly, I find there's more awareness here. The Celiac Canada has been around for really, I think, 50 years. Fun fact is that my grandma was Canadian, and she joined the local Celiac Canada chapter when I was a little girl, and so she used to give us information. So I've been part of like the Celiac Canada world for many, many years. Yeah, it's like very full circle, which is weird, but you know, I think the one thing here, without, you know, getting too detailed, is like there is one national celiac organization here.
Yeah.
There's one. And that makes a big difference, right? So like, you know, that this is it's a national group. They have chapters and groups across the country. They have active, you know, very active in the Toronto area because that's where the offices are. And so there's this message, and also a lot of advocacy in Parliament, and really like a lot of just very like proactive people in the community that have made a cohesive message for many, many years. And I think that makes a big difference.
They are much more successful with their advocacy, political advocacy, I think, because of that. And I remember, you know, when we did the 1 in 133 thing in 2011 to get the gluten-free food labeling that we have today, that was one of the biggest things that the FDA said to us, is they said, you know, we have not acted on making a gluten-free food labeling, rule because you guys can't agree. And if all of the gluten-free groups can't agree on a standard, then why should we even tackle this? Like, you guys get your house in order and then get back to us. And that's why 1133 was so important, because it was the first time that we had gotten everybody, except for one group, which will go unnamed at this time, together to say we want the less than 20 parts per million standard, which was not perfect, but it was something that we could at least all agree on because it was the international standard at the time.
Right.
And then when we brought that to the FDA and said we got everybody in the room and we all agreed, that's the only time the FDA was like, oh, okay, well, if you're all here telling us this, now we will act. And Celiac Canada does that all the time.
Yeah.
And so they have been ahead of us every single time on all of their labeling, on all of their, political efforts, everything. And I think that's clearly the reason, is because they've been speaking with one voice.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and I see that. I mean, there's a level of awareness here that really surprised me at the beginning, because when I would ask for a gluten-free menu, in many places they'll say, "Oh, are you celiac?" And I was like, "What? Like, you know what that means?" You know? And the added complexity is that I'm in Quebec, and so there actually is a Celiac Quebec group.
So French. So
French. Not associated with Celiac Canada, and that's due to language, laws and stuff. But at the same time, the level of standard for Celiac Quebec is the same level of standard for Celiac Canada. So they are on the same page with that. But in general, like, the labeling seems better. The seriousness, like, I actually found like a rogue grain in one of my breads, and like there is a formal way to report it, and like somebody called me on the phone to follow up on it and like was really, really thorough. I can't remember the...
What is that?
Yeah,
what is that like?
I remember the agency it was, and but they followed up, and they were like so on top of it. And I mean, I know
that's great.
That right now in the U.S. with all these recalls and people getting sick, like I feel lucky to be here right now, because they are still like very much on top of like the whole food system here. But definitely for the gluten free, there are protocols that we could take to report something that's mislabeled. and you will, I mean, people call me back like within a week and I'm like, what is this? Like, this is crazy.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, and before we let you go on this whole celiac versus, I mean, the Canada celiac versus America celiac labeling thing, I think one of the most interesting, like, differences that people can see right in front of their eyes and understand is the difference between labeling Cheerios. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you want to speak to that, if you can distill it easily into a soundbite, but basically, the fact that Celiac Canada has spoken, and there is a different labeling standard for the same box of Cheerios in Canada versus in the United States.
Yeah. I feel like that could be a loaded question, but
well, it's a fact though. I mean, you don't have to comment on your opinion about it, but
no. I mean, I know, Erica, you worked so hard in kind of like purity protocol oats and the gluten-free oats, but I think Celiac Canada was ahead on that, on like the labeling of things with oats and how they label, oats in this country. So, but yeah, again, Jules, it's like what you were saying. It's like it comes down to legislation and the way things are allowed to be labeled in this country, and it goes beyond gluten-free as well. I mean, I feel like it's definitely like a cleaner food system here, and so it's been interesting to just see in general, like the labeling. The other thing here in Canada, which I don't know if you've ever considered expanding here, Jules, is like everything has to be bilingual by law.
Yeah.
So, that adds another level. And I actually have talked to some friends who have businesses in the US, and they're like, we just can't like make the labels work. And then the distribution channels are very different. And so there's a lot of products that I would love to see from the US come here, but they will never cross the border, and vice versa. Like there's a lot of products here that I just like, I'm like, wow, what people in the US are missing out, like,
yeah.
I wish
we actually did have our flour it was labeled bilingually, and it was we were shipping it across the border, and we were in Amazon Canada for a while. It's so expensive to get it across the border anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, with our lovely cross-border issues that we have, it's too expensive, and we can't afford to subsidize that. So unfortunately, that's not happening right now. But just to summarize what I was saying,
she's talking about tariffs.
With tariffs, the T word.
Things are really great right now.
It's a bad T word.
I feel better. Don't you feel better? I feel like somehow these tariffs are making me better. Anyway,
it's making me feel like a winner.
All I was saying for people about the Cheerios is that in Canada, Cheerios are not allowed to be labeled gluten-free.
Right.
And in the United States, Cheerios is labeled gluten-free.
Yeah.
And it's because of the oats. Because the oats are mechanically and optically sorted. They're not purity protocol, and they're not testing accurately, below 20 parts per million, et cetera, et cetera. So, there you have it. Interesting. Fun fact, right?
Right.
You're making my blood pressure go up. Anything else? I would love to just have a Canada versus US episode and just chop that into bits.
I mean, I have to say, I've been pleasantly surprised here in Montreal. There's a lot of options. And also when I went to Toronto, I was like, it's great. I think Toronto has a lot to do with being so close to the Celiac Canada headquarters. And I think we've talked about this in the past, like where there's a big center in the US, like New York or Chicago, like these places have a lot more places to eat. And I think big cities in Canada get it right, but also they've been doing this correctly for a very long time. So I've been very pleasantly surprised here. I eat well here.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Erin,
take us with you, and maybe
please.
I am a
arrange
safe
for our
haven.
passports to get stamped.
I have a lot of couches and blow-up mattresses. Feel free to come.
Would you like to adopt me?
No cats. Sorry, no cats.
Oh, darn
no
it.
cats,
We can't come. We have cats.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, Erin, congratulations on this amazing celiac anniversary that you've had. We're so honored to have you in our community and to have led our community to such amazing things over the time that you have been sacrificing your sanity to be a part of this community. We're so grateful. I know so many people have relied on you over the years, and we're just so lucky to have you. So congratulations on your celiac anniversary. Thank you again for coming to the You Had Me at Eat podcast. We hope to have you again soon, and maybe we'll get a little down and dirty on some of the Canadian things that you're interested in.
Yeah, thank you. And really, like, when I hit this milestone, it was the two of you who I've known, Jules probably more than 15 years, Erica at least 10 years, but it feels like way more. And really,
that, yeah.
the two of you have been a part of this community for so long, and really, you are voices that I continue to look to and respect. And I think that, in this day and age, like, we need like tried and true resources, and the two of you really are that to me as well. So thank you.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much. And we appreciate your friendship and your steadfast efforts in the celiac and gluten-free world. So keep up the good work. And
thank you. You
hopefully
too.
we will get to see you one of these days.
Yes.
Live and in person again.
In Canada.
In Canada.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of You Had Me at Eat, and we'll see you on the next episode.